My name is Alex. I have an Instagram and YouTube Low Sugar Show. So I want to thank you for taking your time for doing the interview. Of
Hi, Alex. I'm Dave. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
course. So the first question that I ask anyone that I ever interview is, how's everything going? Not just musically, but also in your personal life as well, because that's important too.
Things are going really well in my world in general. I would say it's been a really busy time working with YOB on some new stuff and getting two Semantron sets together. I'm getting a set together with a band for a show on the release date, which is in 1 week from today. Uh, and I'm leaving Tuesday for rehearsals in Seattle, where most of the band is, and and I'm also getting a solo set together for some shows with Von Til, where I'll be playing some Semantron songs, but just with guitar and just a solo act.
Awesome. So it sounds like you're definitely going to be busy for a little bit.
Super busy, yeah, but
Uh,
very.
so with this LP being like a solo project, how do you feel going off and kind of doing like a solo thing versus like in a band setting?
Um, well, it's going to be my first time doing any of this stuff as a solo performer.
Hmm.
But I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm still working on the kind of the shape I want to give the set sonically. I want it to be a little bit different rather than just playing along two tracks or something. I'm going to do some live guitar loops and I'm going to play synth with my foot while I do the rest of it. So it's sonically it's coming together pretty interesting. So I'm feeling pretty good about it actually. Looking forward to it.
That's awesome. Do
Yeah.
you feel like more comfortable like doing it on your own, or have you like met any challenges since it's just you kind of like doing a solo thing?
I think the main challenge for the solo thing is just, um, getting it's sort of like a coordination thing, really, like getting the synth parts down, but also
Hmm.
just reimagining the pieces. Like the record's just about to come out as it was written, and now I'm already like reimagining how to do them in an interesting way as a solo artist. I feel more comfortable with the band. It's just kind of what I've always done with my solo projects. I've always had bands behind me live, which I enjoy. But I'm also just really happy to have the opportunity to play some shows with Steve, and that is Steve Von Til. I'll be opening for him for a few shows on our run in August.
Well,
And
that's fun.
yeah, actually, the Steve Von Til project uh, has informed me quite a bit in terms of what I will do solo wise because I play several instruments for Steve, synth and guitar and bass and percussions and stuff. So I've kind of learned to slowly juggle instruments through working with Steve, which is helping me out quite a bit on the solo stuff.
That's awesome. So it kind of give you some like experience and like a little looking glass into what you can do yourself.
Yeah, very well said. And also, yeah, experience and some technical. It helped me, overcome some of the technical challenges as well.
Awesome. And I want to talk about the creation process of this album. From what I understand, the winter of 2023, you rented an off-grid cabin.
I did, yeah, in Washington State. So I'm in Portland right now, and this cabin is just across the Columbia River, but about 50 miles east of here, well, about 60 miles east of here.
Wow.
And it's at the base of a conical volcano called Mount Adams. And it's the largest conical volcano in the lower 48 states, which is to say outside of Alaska. And now Mount Rainier near Seattle is the tallest, but this is the Mount Adams is the largest one by mass.
Oh, wow.
So it really creates a lot of snow. And so for that winter, I was literally snowed in for most of the winter, snowshoeing in and out of the cabin and using a
Oh,
generator,
wow.
charge batteries to do my recording with,
And what made you want to, I guess, kind of go off grid and, go into a cabin, and how did that contribute to your creation process?
Well, I think what I think part of the reason I wanted to go out there was because I felt like that kind of environment would add some sort of an atmospheric element to the creation process that I wanted to have come through with these songs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and also, I just needed some time. I needed a lot of time, and I needed to have not much else to do, really. So I needed some place where I could really focus. And I had actually started the recording of this record like three times, and just gone, and then been partially through the recording process and gone on tour, and then maybe gone on to another tour after that, and come back a few months later and had a hard time like getting back into where I had left off. So I just started over each time, and
Oh, wow.
I really wanted to just finish this once and for all. So I thought that some isolation and some making it hard to get out was kind of part of the plan. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, hard to
Well,
get a project.
that definitely shows dedication. If you had to start over, like three different times and you finally like saw it through to the end, because sometimes when people stop something, they don't always come back. So,
Very true. Yeah, it's yeah, it's actually was a really, I think, obviously from that story, it's a pretty high priority for me. It's something that I was a goal that I wanted to do, but also just an expression that I wanted to let out. I really wanted to express myself in this way. You know,
and do you think like the isolation and like, it being kind of like off grid with, a volcano around and not really much other people, do you think that inspired this album, LP?
I think it did. Yeah, I do. And it's funny because most of the music was written on the road. So on tour, you're sort of around people. If you're on
Mm-hmm.
you wake up in a bus full of people, and
Yeah.
then you go into a venue full of new people, and then there's the whole day is kind of, you're always around people for sometimes months at a time. And
Mm-hmm.
so being written in such a busy environment, it was almost sort of I think some of the music was sort of a longing for isolation, or a longing for a natural space, or longing for a quiet moment. So I think the cabin was just the right environment to. I think the record has a bit of a distant vibe
Mm-hmm.
to it, anyways, and I think that was a great spot to get that distant vibe. Because I mean, I was up there for 180 days, and I saw humans on 40 of those days, and usually it was just Mike and Aaron. I would, you know, shovel my way out of the dirt road there, which is just covered in
Yeah.
snow, and make a 3-hour trip to Portland to practice with YOB, and then stay a couple of days there here in Portland, and then go back up to the cabin.
Well, it sounds like a good vacation from people.
It was pretty nice, but also, by the end, I got to admit that got to be a lot of time without seeing people.
Yeah.
140 out of 180 days were just me and a cat. So it got to be a lot.
So how did this, like, I guess, nature inspire the sound of this as well? Because it sounds like there's definitely some like nature elements in this.
Yes, for sure. Um, you know, nature is a place where I do, like when I'm backpacking, for example, I kind of, after the first couple of days of sort of like detox from my daily life,
Mhm.
once I sort of settle into just being alone in the mountains, I typically get a lot of sonic material floating around in my head. And the songs that I've been working on, for example, on the road,
Hmm.
sometimes will become really clear when I'm in the mountains, or sometimes when I just am inspired by something I'm looking at. Maybe a big glacial valley or something.
Hmm.
Sometimes inspiration comes directly from those experiences. This record won't include the song that I'm going to talk about right now, but the next record will actually. I started this process with 15 songs, and 6 of them ended up being this record. So,
Hmm.
but for example, I was at Mount St. Helens, which is a volcano that had a really an amazing explosion here in 1980. And
Yeah.
just a few years back, I was there just looking at this massive crater that was left from this eruption,
Hmm.
and a whole sonic idea of a sort of I would say, a sonic abstraction of and a homage to the Olympic mountain range, where
Hmm.
kind of did this. The idea was just basically a sonic life and times of the Olympic mountains. So definitely uh, moments like that, full pieces of music can just sort of appear in my mind, and then
Oh, wow.
I'll do the best I can to make myself a voice note about the piece. And if I'm on
Yeah.
a backpacking trip, I could come home with like 40 different voice notes about one song. And so
Yeah.
that was a lot of stuff to sort of put together. And that's, again, why the isolation was really good for me, because I just basically slept with a guitar in my bed and would work all day and, you know,
Hmm.
work again until I fell asleep. And it was a good environment to bring out, I guess, to bring out the source of inspiration really for a lot of this music.
So I know you mentioned a few volcanoes, so I have to ask, do you have like a thing for them, or is your passion like looking at volcanoes, or
Well, we're sort of surrounded by them up here in the Northwest.
yeah.
Right now, there's an active volcano in the city limits of Portland. It's the only city that I've heard. It's the only city in the States that has an active volcano in the actual boundaries of the city. So we're
Wow.
really surrounded by them, and they are a noticeable kind of crown on the natural, uh, you know, just on the, yeah, there's so many mountains and so much forest up here in the Northwest, and they're sort of the crowning jewels, I think, of these mountain ranges.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. I mean, a little scary, but also really cool to have, that much in such a small area.
Mhm.
And I know this start like you do have other bands and other things that you're doing, and this is, a project you're working on as well. Do you think it's going to continue to be just kind of like a side project, or do you want it to become something more?
I definitely want to become something more for sure. I'm planning to tour it next year, although it's going to be a really busy year with YOB. But yeah, it's definitely a priority for me, for sure. Especially with the record isn't quite out yet, but the
Hmm.
pre-sales and the responses from the first 2 singles I put out have been really, really uh, just like touchingly positive. I really kind of feel like it
Yeah.
made an impact for some people so far, and so yeah, I hope to continue with that for sure.
And was there a point where you're just like, okay, this is just something I'm doing on the side, and then you realize like, okay, this is going to be way more than just something I'm doing whenever I feel like it.
Well, I don't know, actually. That's a good question because for me, I'm always writing music, and it just seems like what I do with my life, you know.
Yeah.
And And so whether or not this record was ready now and whether or not this record was coming out right now, I would still just be writing music, you know? So I'm happy that it's gotten some, you know, some positive response from people, because that does encourage me to continue with it and to make the effort to bring it to more and more people, you know.
hmm And for someone who hasn't listened to it, how would you describe this to them? Like the
Hmm.
sound or the feeling?
I would say it's a pretty personal sound. I would say it's meditative in a way, a little bit immersive and sonically expansive. I think you know, musically, probably the main influence that I hear back when I'm listening to it is probably like, you know, early Pink Floyd from the late 60s into the early mid 70s, you know, sort of
Yeah.
psychedelic, but also, and also very sonic, but a bit introspective as well.
Yeah, I listened to the album as well, and I feel like it's also like really relaxing. I don't
Right.
know, like just because of all the sounds and it's, just it gave me like that really relaxing feeling. It's a perfect album, I think, if you're going to be in a cabin somewhere.
Right.
Just relaxing in your little hot tub, maybe have, like a glass of water or, whatever adult drink you'd like to have. But I just feel like, it would be perfect for that.
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
And what does this album mean to you personally?
Well, I guess it's what it means to me personally is just I feel that really it is really a personal expression, which is to
Hmm
say, I'm usually uh, you know, co-writing pieces with people or writing some parts to some piece of music that someone else is working on, that kind of thing. And this was really just kind of digging deep into myself and going just kind of letting my inner musical spirit loose to do what it wanted, find its own path. And I think it did that. I think find its own path is a good way to put this record. It sort of has its own, uh, in, from my perspective, in my mind, sort of has its own voice. You know, there's obviously influences and
hmm
intertwining with everything we all do in all aspects of life. But I feel like what I really wanted to do was express something that's been like my interior musical identity since childhood, really, you know.
Yeah. And were you kind of surprised, like what came out of you, like when you go back and you listen to it, like, and you're like, oh wow, like I wrote all of this. Are you like kind of surprised, or were you just like, oh yeah, I knew I had that in me?
I didn't know what it was gonna. You know, in fact, towards the end of the process of the recording process, just before mixing it, I had I had no idea if it was even like musical. I just had no idea if it was gonna. Basically, there were so many moving parts in the recording of the record that I was sort of lost in this the technical aspects of recording it. And on the first day of mixing the record with my friend Nate Yacino, who did, I think, an amazing job mixing it. I
hmm
sat down behind him and his at his console there, and he began mixing. And a few minutes into it, with another set of ears in the room, and me also turning it over to someone else and not and being kind of done, you know, with the project. I was able to hear it musically for the first time in a long time. And at that point, I was surprised. I was like, wow, this actually is, these are songs.
Yeah.
Didn't know if it was just a bunch of sounds or what, but they sound like songs. And that was a pleasant surprise.
Well, that must have been a good feeling because it sounds like you weren't even like You were kind of shocked what you heard afterwards.
I was, I really was. Like I said, I just kind of got lost in the technical stuff,
Yeah.
and yeah, at a certain point, I just didn't know what it sounded like
Hmm.
because I could I could picture and conjure any part of any song on any instrument in my mind, but there was sort of all these parts just sort of floating around in my head.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I heard Nate begin to mix it, it sounded like music again, which was really nice.
That's awesome. So I know you said there was quite a few songs, but only so many made it onto this actual album. How did you decide like what was going onto it, what wasn't? Are you going to use the other ones in a different project, or what's kind of like the deal on all of that?
Yeah, actually, I think the reason I chose these 6 songs is just because well, one, they fit really well together. Some of the other ones are, even though they're not all super similar sonically. Even the first two singles I put out, I think are really sonically different, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I feel like these songs, one, fit really well together, and two, were a nice introduction. I feel like they were a fitting introduction to what will be this continuing recording project. And
Hmm.
so that's how I chose these particular songs. And yes, some of the songs, some of the other of the 15 songs that I started with will be another record next year. Probably or hopefully right around this time again next year.
Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah, very.
So out of the six songs that are on this track, like the six tracks on here, which song would you say is like the heart of the album, like the one that just kind of like it can't exist without it?
Well, I think there's sort of funny enough, there's sort of two of them, and I think the first one would be Primary Planets, as that was the first song written in this series and sort of was the seed for what became this sound uh,
Mm-hmm.
for me. And the other is, I would say, At the Feet of Friendship, which was the first single that came out. And was also the last song to be written. In fact, it's the only song that was written at the cabin. All of these other songs were written elsewhere and then sort of assembled and the recording process the recording process was started in earnest at the cabin, but they were all written while traveling. You
Oh
know,
wow.
there's a song called Piha that Piha is a nature reserve on the North Island of New Zealand, and that's where that song the first came to me. The first part of that song came to me at Piha, which is how it got its name. But
Oh,
the next part of that song came to me in Iceland, and then again I found sort of the rest of that song in the south of France, in Montpellier. So uh, there are all these kind of voyage songs, except for At the Feet of Friendship, which was entirely written at the cabin. So both of those pieces sort of seem like they are kind of cornerstones of the record.
and what's next for you? Like I know the album releases here in a few days, but what comes after that?
After that, well, uh, my next shows for some with Semantron will be in August. Um, but in the meantime, I've got a lot of stuff to do with YOB. We're really honing in on the last part of the writing process for the new YOB record. So we've been wrapping up rehearsals and so I'll be spending a lot of time with YOB. We've also got some shows through the summer, as
Hmm.
well. Just a few because we are going into the studio a little bit later, um, at the end of the summer. But then, so after, well, there's the Von Till tour in August where I'll be playing a few dates as Semantron while also playing in Steve's band. And then I have a Semantron. This is not 100% yet, but I think it's about 99% sure that I'll be playing 5 shows in December in the UK.
Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah, really exciting.
Well, awesome. So I will let you let the listeners know what the album name is, when it's coming out, and where they can get a copy of it or listen to it once it comes out or pre-order it.
Well, the project is called Semantron. The album is called Secrets of the Krummholz Heart, and it comes out a week from today on July 10th. And you can, if you're in the States or kind of anywhere outside of Europe, you can order straight from my Bandcamp, which is, I believe it's just Semantron on Bandcamp, Semantron at Bandcamp. Or if you're in Europe or Scandinavia, order directly from Evil Greed in Berlin.
Awesome. Well, for anyone listening, I'll put all the links below so it makes it really easy for you guys. You don't have to go looking for it. You just click the link, it'll take you right there. And I want to thank you so much for doing this interview. I listened to the album. I think it's a great, relaxing album, and I think you guys definitely need to add it to your collection for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me.